I'll go first. I'm Lawrence Yang. One of my identities is as a family doctor. I'm also a father, and I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts, and I love old Japanese cars. That's a lot about me. How about yourself, Rummy? Introduce your name.
Okay.
Your name and kind of like what you do, what occupies your time.
Okay, full name is Ramneek Dosanjh. I am a family physician, and I also work as a hospitalist, but I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, an advocate, and above all, a human, a spirit, having an experience. And my full name, Ramneek, was gifted to me by my father, and it's a Sanskrit origin, and it means everlasting impressions. So growing up, it was a tall order. So some people know me by Rummy as my short name.
Wow, you really live up to it. You do make an everlasting impression. I remember, I think some of the first times I've met you, like you run up and you give your energy, like, very positive, positive energy, and you lift people up, and it leaves an everlasting impression. I think some people say, like, it doesn't really matter really what you do. It's really about how you make people feel. And somehow you're really effective at that.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's paid by a heavy compliment by a giant in my eyes, because I think for one of the first times I met you, we were at a continuing medical education event where you were the presenter,
Mm-hmm.
and you shared your own story and your vulnerability. And for me, as one of your colleagues and peers, that showcasing your vulnerability and ability to open up gave me the power and courage to do the same. So
that's awesome. I think you're talking about one of those practice support programs where I was sharing my story of how I got into trouble prescribing opioids, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That prescribing opioids is such a tricky thing, because as family doctors, we all really want to help people, but it's so easy to go too far and to overhelp or to overprescribe and then get people kind of stuck with opioids. Right. So we can actually slow people down, and it's so complex, that decision making for us. What a huge responsibility family doctors have, eh?
Such a big one.
I'm currently doing a little bit of mentorship within my division, and some early career physicians are struggling with that exact same thing. And because I would put myself out there with going through those struggles and then learning through what the College of Physicians made me do, some of the practice support program people put me in touch with some of the new early career physicians who are struggling with the same thing. And it feels amazing to be able to share some of those learnings that I learned with them in a one-on-one kind of like coaching or mentorship, peer learning situation.
And I think there's something to be said about that, because I think people, at least the public and our patients, there's a persona. There is a stoicism about medicine. And for us, we're all very high achieving, usually type A, overly competitive individuals that have this expectation, whether it's a self-inflicted expectation or an external world, association. I feel that when you're able to leverage your vulnerability with others, it makes them feel so much less, the weight of the responsibility lessens and the burden is shared. And I think that is what I feel our profession needs more than anything, is that ability to be able to be okay. And I also think it plays into our mistakes. I think if we're ability to reach out for help when we need it, ability to know our own limit and stay within it and ask for partnership or consult. I rely so heavily on my specialist colleagues every day, as I'm sure you do as well. I think saving a mistake, we play with people's lives, not playing, but we have to protect them at a level of, it's such a responsibility. And I don't know if you felt that way, but I've always felt this extreme burden. Loved the burden in the one way that I chose this, and I understand this is the field in which we practice, but I also believe that they're looking to us to represent them to be their voice, to be their advocate. And if we don't be very self-aware in what we can do, what we're able to do to provide the best care, then we're limiting them and we're putting ourselves in a little bit of jeopardy or predicament.
Absolutely. It resonates a lot what you said. The burden of our responsibility as physicians, that combined with that culture of toxic perfectionism that comes insidiously and not always explicitly when we get into the culture of medical education even. Did you experience that kind of culture of perfectionism when you went through medical education?
I did. I think more than the medical education, I think I grew up with it. I think it was, always being the straight A, rule following, by the book, first daughter in my family. I felt a lot of expectation. I was born to immigrant parents that come here to the land of opportunity, and, always being cognizant of shine, but shine quietly, do what you're told, don't make noise, do as you're told. And then I was in athletics growing up as well, very competitive athletics, and you try your hardest. You don't want to make a mistake. It's this, you get wrapped into this perfectionism, and it follows you, whether it's through, body image with friends or people around you as you're growing up, the expectations of culture and society. And then here you are, you're going to medicine, and you've got, some of the most brilliant humans that are among you. And then it becomes another competitive environment of, I don't know about you, but I was in situations where our grades were posted, with our names, and you're at the top of the list. People are coming for you. You're always like, there's a mark on your back. Or then they change to student numbers because you say, I don't want that. Then people, know your student number. And then if there's this element, and then in residency, same thing, is that if you're a shining resident, watch out, because people feel a little threatened or maybe intimidated. And I think it speaks to maybe the insecurity or just that expectation. And there's always a little bit of sadness there for me, because keeping up with everybody at that pace is not human. At the same time, we program ourselves to thinking that have to be these perfect beings all the time. And no matter what we're facing at home, personal struggles or anything that surrounds us, we're just told to be quiet and perform and show up anyways. And especially with working really long hours, having sequelae with health or burnout, or having colleagues really struggle and watching them struggle, it can be very challenging to not be able to speak up for them because they're at risk of their job or their profession. There's this feeling I've seen and felt and shared conversations with people that will quietly tell you things that it's heartbreaking, because they're in a situation that if they speak up about it, they really could, their professional life could be on the line, and comes with that is the responsibility and the weight of their family or their cultural expectation or whatever they're burdened with, right? So
that really hits close to home. I mean, you mentioned how expectations placed on us by our parents, either explicitly or implicitly, we take those on and we bring them into school. And then the whole culture, we've self-selected a whole group of people who are really high achieving, and then we compete again. So there's always a level of stress. And then once we graduate, we still hold those pressures on ourselves. And then patients hold those expectations on us as well. And then when our humanness, our fallibility, our errors, they can accumulate, and then we feel like we can't actually speak about them or even ask for help. I mean, wow, what a recipe, what a pressure cooker for risk and for lack of safety for both the health professional and maybe even those that they work with.
Right.
How have you navigated that?
Yeah,
That's
I think I wrestle because, I had this conversation not too long ago with my father
mm,
because I've had really open conversations. My parents are two of my best friends, and I've been able to really repair a lot of the memories. And, they just didn't know any better. They did as best as they thought. And actually, interesting enough, my father tried to discourage me from medicine. My brother's in medicine, and he thought, leave it to him. I think it might be too much of a burden for you. But he taught
wow.
me taught my sister and I to be the fiercest girls and be just as good as the boys. And especially in athletics, we could compete with all the boys because that's how hard we worked. And our work ethic was that because I'm a girl, I'm not going to be rejected, So we had this really strong work ethic and this fiber of doing your best, always improving, but also the tough love, right? We grew up with you just suck it up, keep going. Everyone's going through adversity, everybody's going through change. And when you look at your parents left their countries, they left what they knew. They came here with a few dollars in their pockets, had no way of navigating the system, and had immense racism. And what they were subject to, again, makes you want to be quiet. Because my first world problem is really not that big of a problem at the end of the day, right? So there's this internal dialogue, I feel, that we tell ourselves that whatever I'm going through, my suffering's not that bad. And I don't know if you feel the same way. Like I have this thing I wrestle with. I go to bed and I think about what about Yemen, or I think about human rights around the world and the injustice that are occurring. And I think, how shallow of me to think that my problems are real problems. So it's almost, there's another competitive effect of that. My trauma is not as severe as someone else's trauma, so I should just keep quiet about it.
Wow. Wow. I don't know if there's many people who put that much pressure on themselves to care about problems really far away. That's that's immense, Rummy. That's
Well, I
wow.
think, Lawrence, I think when I realize this, most physicians that are empaths struggle with this, right? And I have had
Mm,
these conversations, and actually sometimes even in our medical lounge at lunch, we'll have really deep conversations about global health or human rights or what's going on in the world outside, what's happening in the emergency department or within our own hospital struggle. So
yeah, that what you said about relatively comparing our own sufferings to that of maybe our parents or to those in another time period or another nation,
right,
and then actually like discounting our own struggles. I
right,
don't know if that's completely fair to us. I think
right,
struggles are relative, and
right,
I think things can feel really, really challenging wherever you are. And when we start to judge ourselves on our you're so weak, you can't even take
right,
this first world problem. I mean, I don't know if
right.
that's completely healthy, but I know what you mean because I've done it myself.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's the pattern we need to disrupt. We need to
Mm,
consciously erode this culture that exists and that minimizes our own concerns, our own worth, our own expectations. I think this is the place that we need to work on and develop and allow
mhm,
ourselves the space to be brave and courageous and be vulnerable. And I think
mhm,
until we allow that as a profession, we really, and I don't, like, this is obviously my opinion, is that when we allow that, like you did that day, I remember you allowing that vulnerability to someone else. And actually, the college, the regulatory body of our province, allowing this conversation to be had is a powerful statement because we always feel that we're like punitive and we're being asked and challenged and the authority coming at us, we personalize it, we get defensive and we get reactive. That's our natural go-to, is that how dare you don't see what I'm feeling. But the more intimate conversation and relationship building in that, what I think that process was beautiful because they let you come undone. They recognize you as a human. They said that you've made a mistake and there's a better way of doing things. They've encouraged some sort of accountability in the process of learning about self-awareness and the insight into change. And I think when we allow that to happen, there's beautiful transformation. And I think because you and I have both had those vulnerabilities and our own experiences, that I feel like I'm a better physician. I definitely feel like I'm a better mother because of it, and a better advocate because I feel that I had to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. And that learning process of undoing and confronting the perfectionism, confronting the type A personality, and everything needs to be controlled and it needs to go a certain way with a certain outcome, that certainty, and allowing us to be in that space of uncertainty and vulnerability, especially amongst peers who we, definitely show up differently in front of.
We want so much to be, well regarded by our peers. I mean, our peers' judgment is probably the one that we fear the most sometimes, aside from, because we're done with our parents' judgment. They know us, our bruises in and our, they know when we're putting makeup on and everything. Like they know us, but our peers' judgment is it's why we hold up these airs, these facades of perfection sometimes until we feel safe. And you're right. A leader showing that I am vulnerable. I'm just human, and to err is human, and to exemplify that, and then to be able to move forward and say it doesn't make me any less of a person. I actually, as you just said now, because I recognize my fallibility, but I also recognize my self-awareness. Now I can actually move forward. I can actually accelerate my learning faster because I'm no longer fighting with ego. I'm no longer saying, actually, I'm never wrong or whatever like that. And that experience that I had with the college and my prescribing absolutely was a breakthrough moment, and it was a forced breakthrough moment. And I hope that our colleagues can experience that before having to go to the college and explain what they're prescribing.
I think my moment came with my own vulnerability in 2011. I had a true cauda equina syndrome. And I don't know if people know that are watching, but that's when your spinal cord loose. I lost complete bowel, bladder function of my lower limbs. And I had to come undone. A lot of who I was associated with my physicality, with my performance. I was an athlete growing up, and I was an avid runner. Stress release for me was exercise. I've always believed in health and wellness, and I always felt that as a doc, you needed to walk the walk, be healthy and fit. And then it was taken away from me in an instant. And those arduous months of recovery and depending on the outside world and your internal dialogue, those were probably some of the hardest months of my life. And that moment for me to say to my patients, I can't return to my practice to take care of you because I need to take care of myself first was a really hard moment. I think also to put my self-care and my healing before others was a really hard lesson, and to depend on my amazing colleagues that helped me get through that. My neurosurgeon, who I feel saved my ability to practice because he took a chance, he repaired what he could, and his expectations were that you don't expect to walk after this, but I hope you find something in your career that can give you that. And I didn't allow it. I said, I am going to have this. And I tell my patients the same thing, is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Focus on the light. No matter how dark the tunnel is, there's an exit, and focus on the light. And I was convinced that I was going to walk again and going to have my function again and, have hope. And so sometimes people call me as the delusional optimist in medicine or in my own personal life, but I was, until someone takes that completely from me, I'm going to stick to it. And I feel that resilience and grit that was formed from my vulnerability was something that I take with me every day.
Yeah. Wow. How does one get cauda equina? Is it something that you acquire through an injury, or is it a genetic thing? Like, how did you get that? And
Well, I
this,
had back problems. I had a rollerblading accident when I was 16. I had really injured my back terribly, and I had a disc prolapse when I was 22. I did a
mm,
heavy squat weightlifting, and I'd ruptured my disc, but they didn't think those were precursors because I had healed them. I was active.
mm,
So they don't really know why.
mm,
There is an uncertainty there, which I have wrestled with, but I've also surrendered because I think
mm,
for me, one of the greatest lessons in life has been to surrender. You know, you
mm,
don't you don't have all the answers, but if you just trust in the process, which I feel helps collaboration, it helps difficult conversations, and it just I feel that still vulnerability, as much as it's sometimes even mocked in our profession. I think
mm,
it disarms people. And now I challenge people on it because when I
mm,
get reactions that are maybe not as fruitful that I would like, people come back and say, I didn't hear you the first time. I felt it was a little woo woo what you were saying, but it helped me think about things. And I feel that in our profession, people want to be seen as, of course, the rock stars that they are and how they perform, and but also what the humans, right? I feel like
mm,
it's really important to humanize ourselves in such a stoic culture, because I think as much as it was previously believed in history is that your doctor should be dressed a certain way, should wear a white coat, should talk a certain way, should not, should have a very clear, distinct boundary. I think, well, I believe between the doctor patient, there are definite relationship boundaries. I believe amongst colleagues, it's really important to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and know where we're coming from, because even if they're the opposite, I've learned that the most powerful moments of learning amongst leadership and being with many giants in rooms is that even if they've got a complete divergent opinion than of my own, there's a lot of learning to do there. There's a lot of learning as to why I feel my opinion should be a certain way and why are they thinking that way? How do they come about that? So I've been really curious and inquiring about how people think and why people think a certain way, and really allowing room for me to think about what's unfolding. I mean, we are in unprecedented times right now. There's a lot going on with our neighbors in the South. And I feel, as much as I may agree or disagree with certain political opinions, I think it's really important to understand why people do what they do. And I think I've always had this drive to know why and how people think and why they think
mm,
certain ways, because the motivations are very important to be able to have very thoughtful, considerate discussions, such as negotiations or money or economics. Like, to move the dial forward, we have to be understanding our opposite or people that we are facing and understand what it is that brings them to that conclusion.
And I think jumping to conclusions and guessing at other people's motivations and not really asking, not staying curious, as you're promoting here, has been a huge problem in progression of our collaboration between, even doctors of BC and the divisions of family practice and specialist services committee within the physician community.
Right.
Us and maybe the division guessing what the health authority is doing, that type of assuming motivations has been a huge problem.
Right.
So I think if we all kind of adopt what you had said there about staying curious and really having fulsome discussions about motivations, we could absolutely move forward faster. And that really resonates, Rummy.
I think when you also said to allow the egoic tendency to drift away, I think that's
Mm,
one of the most important drivers. There's a power dynamic, and as someone who understands and has had to surrender part of my egoic identity completely in order to move forward in
Hmm.
my own life, I feel that when we focus on our cause and the reason we show up, the why, like, I know Simon Sinek always talks about the circles, but I've always been curious, even before medicine, my residency statement was, why are you? Like, why are you doing what you're doing and why do you exist? And if you remember the why and how you show up, then you actually see the commonality of your goal, no matter how different your opinion is, no matter what side of the table you sit on. But if you focus on the direction in which you want to change or what you want to bring about, because I do feel that diversity of opinion is very important to make lasting, sustainable change, because I don't think having a think tank or leaders that lead the exact same way is very conducive to our change mechanisms, because different people have different ideas and different opinions. And so we know we need a mix of everyone, and everyone's voice is equally important. And unless we understand that and roll our sleeves up and really think and take ourselves out of it and think about what is a common purpose? What do we truly want? I truly believe that most, if not all, I don't want to speak for all the voices, I don't speak for them, but in my opinion, I think from all the colleagues that I interact with on a daily basis, conversations I have, is that the goodwill and most want the best for their patient and they want the best for themselves. We are in a state of, when Stephen Kotler and them talk about flow, medicine is not in a state of flow. So no matter how much self work we do and we get into our zen and we get into our flow, we come into a system which does not flow how we need it to flow. And I feel the advocacy portion of that is, both as a patient and a provider, that we need to work on the flow of how things work together. And if we really understand our motivations are all the same, if they're truly the same, is to develop the most efficient healthcare system with the best possible outcomes for our public and our patients, then we're all on the same dial. I think what happens is we change, or there's power dynamics, or people feel like they're controlling certain part of the levers, then they have more pull than others. But I really feel like if we had a vulnerable discussion, we get into a room together and really co-create a culture in which we're going to have safe conversations and allow everyone to disarm themselves from their positions, from who they represent, and show up as humans and have authentic, raw, vulnerable conversations, I think we do different work. Because I've been part of the child youth mental health, as you have with the Substance Use Collaborative, and the work that I saw through that lens, with the patient and parent and child at the center, and coming between all sectors and prongs of the table being there, and really having these discussions that are moving that dial forward, are actually consciously coming together in a place where change is possible. The opportunity is there, allowing people to inform the process and how things unfold, I think is truly valuable.
I've I have to attest to that too. I mean, I've been a part of a few of those child and youth mental health tables, and having patients at the table, having parents at the table, and physicians, people from the school, people who work in schools, and having doctors and nurses there, and people from political leadership. What an amazing collaboration! It really was like all the silos all of a sudden got bridged for the children. I mean, I was like, yes, that was like so amazing. It's a fantastic work. And for all those people who weren't able to witness the power of what happened there, and the different changes in the system to be able to fund child and youth mental health a little bit better. I mean,
Right.
What other project are you literally putting resources towards the future for? I mean, it was fantastic.
Right.
I resonate with everything you said there. You mentioned earlier, I'm going to take us on a little bit of an exploration of what you'd said about your childhood. You said that I think your dad, did he encourage you to do a lot of sports? Is that what you said?
Yeah, heavily involved in sports, soccer, track, basketball.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
that's,
yeah, did martial arts, karate.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'd assume that you probably are a high level belt in karate. I mean, you're a
Well,
fighter yourself.
my dad was, it's interesting. We just learned something recently, which, my dad, we always used to wonder, my dad was my sensei, was a brown belt for
Oh,
years. And we'd be like, why didn't you get your black belt? So recently we discovered, after conversations with my father, I don't know if you know, but my dad's been dealing with the battle of pancreatic cancer this year.
oh
So
my
it's
gosh,
been
no, I
quite a
didn't
heavy
know.
year for our
Mhm.
family. But in one of the conversations, he had said the reason he didn't go for his black belt was the cost.
Oh,
And so, that was a shocker for my sister, my brother, and I when we heard that. And we thought, oh, wow. He was so conscious of every dollar and cent and where it was spent to be able to provide for us an education and to get us to a point of where we could pursue our own dreams that, it was really a different point of where I thought, wow, that's how parents show up for their children, and
mhm.
when you have moments of like that, it really makes you want to continue the sense of responsibility and accountability to your children above others. And I feel the same kind of responsibility to other children that aren't even my children. But I feel that vehemently within myself, I feel like there's a accountability and responsibility for others' lives, and whether or not they're my own, it's championing our communities, our province, our nation, the world, humanity, because I think, and I don't know where that responsibility comes from, but I feel it's inherited. I feel that they've always felt responsible, at least my mother, to our neighbors, to our community, always do more of yourself than and for others, show up in different ways of whether it's charity or philanthropy or whatever way you can contribute, be part of something bigger than yourself. So it's important to carry that torch forward for my daughters as well.
Wow. You are dealing with quite a lot right now. Your father's sick, and you recently had some, I know, some major upheavals in your own family,
Right.
direct family. How are you able to balance kind of like those struggles as well as, your clinical duties or your professional duties? How do
Right.
you manage that?
I feel that, this year has been quite a year, 2020 with COVID. My sister got quite ill, as well as her fiance, who's also a fellow colleague physician. And my dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I've had my own personal family, go through quite a ordeal. I feel as if I wouldn't have. I just had this conversation a bit earlier today with one of my colleagues, and I said, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the army of support behind me. And by that, I mean my family, my friends, but really my colleagues. Because
Mm.
what I love about where I work and who I am connected with are my colleagues look out for one another. And the way they've looked out for me over the years has been exceptional. I've had, countless other surgeries in addition to my cauda equina. I've had my own health care journeys and struggles, but not a day. And my children have had, when my kids get sick, they get hospitalized. That's, I used to think it was a cliche with physicians, but, when they get sick, they get real sick. So my physician colleagues have stepped up to the plate numerous times for me and been there. And this year, that's what kept me going the most, in the darkest moments, in the most trivial or hard times. I look and I see how hard my colleagues work on that front line, protecting us, protecting the public, especially through such a pandemic. I feel that how could I quit or give up or be in a place of sadness and anguish when I have work to do. I have to roll up my sleeves, be a better person. Want to be a change agent in the world we're living in, and you can't quit. Like, you just got to keep up. I've had people show up and colleagues show up, whether they're social distancing drop off for, wellness or check-ins, Zoom calls. It was supposed to be a CME Zoom call, and it ended up being a check-in with me and to see how I was doing and how my father is. And I get, these messages and outpouring. And I think every day, these heroes, in my opinion, heroes, I do believe that physicians in this province are heroes. I know it's a heavy term for a lot of people to wrestle with, but I think people are deserving of that. They have shown up in ways that are so beautiful for me that it, again, allows me to keep going, persevere.
It sounds like throughout all the struggles that you've been through, you've made some amazing strategic moves to be connected to your community and to receive help and to receive positive energy from the people around you, your colleagues and your family.
Right.
That's amazing. I know we have some colleagues who are quite isolated, maybe those in solo practices, or those who are maybe cast judgment on themselves and are really afraid of opening up and being vulnerable and asking for help. What might we be able to do from an organization standpoint to kind of be more available to some of these more isolated?
Well, I think the champions of health, physician health. We have a local leader. I know both you and I know Dr. Connie Ruffo quite well. And I've called her out many times. So she's one of my dearest friends. So I think she won't mind by me mentioning her name. But I feel the physician health and being available. So one of my strategies from the very beginning when I assumed medical staff position or within my own hospital privileges, I was new, completely new. And I knew that I could go about one way quietly doing my work in a silo and do my work and get out, or I could make a point of getting to know the staff and my colleagues. And over the years, I feel that I developed a deep connection and always made myself available for conversations. And my phone, I always tell people, if you need something, text me. I got more phone calls and messages during the COVID crisis than I have ever, because there were a lot of my colleagues that were struggling and didn't know where to turn to. But I feel like if we create the safe space for dialogue and allowing our colleagues to know that we're genuinely there for them, there's nothing that will be shared without their permission. And if they need help, to be creating that space where they're feeling that they're completely able to trust the process, and always lending an ear or always lending a hand. And if I can't do it, finding someone else that will. And I feel that if we create a circle of trust, a network, may it be, amongst ourselves and grow ourselves and say, hey, I'm here to help. The same way we do for our patients, but showing up for colleagues and saying, I'm here anytime, day or night. We're on call. The other thing is that there's always someone on call. And if you can connect to a few colleagues at work that are in the hospital with you, have those conversations, share those difficult times with, the debrief is so important. I think COVID and this pandemic, the economic instability, the repercussions, societal impact, and for our patients and our colleagues has been, astronomical. And I think we haven't seen the majority of it yet. And I think a lot of people have been operating in fight or flight mode, which quite often we do anyways. We've got the highest burnout that we've seen nationally in a long time. And I think putting a global pandemic on top of it has been the sequelae that we haven't prepared for, is what makes me a little nervous. So I think the time and urgency of creating these safe colleague networks, and whether they're just done through our divisions or a medical staff association, but really making sure that, like you made a really good point of the silos and the solo practitioners. And at one point, I was a solo practitioner in my home clinic. I was the only physician there. I had a team of other allied health professionals, but I was alone. And I think not until I was connected with my local division and other colleagues that I could speak with in forums and in a safe environment did I feel, it got me a little boost and a little invigorating my own sense to be part of something bigger than myself. So I think it's really important that we create that structure in which we have, a phone a friend kind of network within our own profession.
Yeah, I think there are so many of our colleagues who are probably in burnout, and they feel like no one hears or sees or knows that they're there. I think that exists, even though we have things like the division, and we have division of family practice, and we have facilities engagement. There are people who are really alone there. And I totally agree that we need to create these safe spaces and kind of outreach programs of colleague support. I don't think anybody else is going to do it for us. I think it has to be internal, but supported by the rest of the infrastructure to make it sustainable. I'm excited for something like that. Mm-hmm.
I think reaching people where they are instead of showing up the way we know how. So I think it's really important to know how people engage. We've got introverts, we've got extroverts, we've got all different personalities, we've got different learning styles. I think being cognizant and aware of the makeup of your profession is very important. In order to be diverse and inclusive, we need to know who we're representing. We need to know who's here on this journey with us. How do we reach them? How's the best way to bring them in? And if they want to be contacted or if they don't. Other ways to do that is allow people the opportunity to bring you into their world. If we have an event for families, if we want people to show up in a different way, if they're comfortable sharing who they are in their personal life, I feel the mask comes off, right? It's just a different way to see people outside of who they are in that role. And many of us play many roles in our lives, but I feel the interconnectedness through the other roles that make us human are ways of seeing each other. And again, leveraging the capacity and watching people unfold and having people be courageous enough to speak up. I mean, my goal is I don't know if you're familiar with the Humans of New York campaign. My goal is to have something similar for the doctors of this province. Whether or not what happens in my future leadership, I want to do it anyways. I think really having an Instagram or a social media platform in which I can actually highlight all the physician colleagues. I'll start with the colleagues I know, and hopefully there'll be an outpouring of people that are willing to share, or someone would share for them and willing to showcase them. And I just feel that if we can create a inertia or a momentum of this opportunity for people to share a piece of who they are and humanize them, it might give us courage to network in a different way or show up in a different way. I love having exit interviews with my retiring colleagues and really picking their brain. I've done that since the beginning of time when I'd get on a shift in the hospital. It's been the early minutes of my day before going into the emerge and into the chaos. I would pick the brains and just ask them, just get to know a little bit about who they were and what were their take-home messages. Because for me, I know people will say I'm early career and mid-career. I want to be the change and get to reap the benefit. I really don't want to wait until I've had to operate in a system which I don't feel truly benefits all of us, and then try to make a change, because I don't want to be ready for retirement when I'm trying to implement change. I really want to be part of the change so I can live the change and carry that forward in a sense that we've actually made our mark. And I really think that we have this collective wisdom within our profession. I really do. And I think it's going to take all of us. I'm one person, you're one person, but together and partnerships, and we know at those tables what we can create. I just think, imagine if we can get all of our colleagues that are either struggling with burnout or disengaged or feeling disenfranchised because they don't have a sense of belonging and connection. I think it's time to restore that.
Yeah, and I really resonate with your message of inclusivity and acknowledgement of the importance of kind of cognitive diversity in the team. You've actually said to me before, these are my strengths, and I think there are other people I know with these strengths. And if we put them all together, like, you seem to see the possibilities really easily of like what could be. And that type of vision is really attractive in a leader. Yeah, go ahead.
I know my limitations. I definitely know my weaknesses, and I know my few strengths. And I want to think is that when I feel I can appreciate what people can bring to the table in a different way. And I know there's so many different ways, even my colleagues at my own local hospital, there's a lot of different thinking that goes on there. There's a lot of different approaches. But what I've learned is, I could have one certain specialty, I could get 4 different specialist opinions, and they could be all variable. Do they achieve the same goal? Yes. They still work on prioritizing patient care, providing the best care, but there's always different ways of doing that. And I realized by forming these relationships and utilizing this way of practice, I feel that we could definitely do something revolutionary. I think we really could, if we really come together at this time, see each other and our similarities and our differences, and use it as an advantage as opposed to a disadvantage. I remember going to this course and I hated conflict. I don't know if you're that way, but I was a very conflict averse person growing up. I kind of shied away from it. I always stood up for, if it was the right thing to do and for fairness and equity. I would always speak for others, especially. But I had a really hard time with conflict in work settings, and I felt intimidated by it. And I remember going to a course and they're teaching you about conflict resolution. And it was actually very different than what I thought it would be. And I left that thinking, wow, how am I going to talk to this human that doesn't see this way of communicating, and just being really forward with things? But it made me think and bend the way I thought. And I started to read more about human behavior and motivations again, thinking styles, and varying my own approach, as uncomfortable as it was, putting myself out there. I think people that come across me, even in certain areas or arenas, always think, oh, she's such an extrovert, she's so outgoing. And no, farthest from it. I'm close to the line, but I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. So I feel like sometimes you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable space and situation in order to meet someone else where they're at. And I think when you're able to do that and let go of your own guarding and really meet them where they're at, then you can see it. I recently watched that coaching. There's a Netflix on the coaches of professional athletes and teams. And I remember just taking away from that, I thought, you know what, this is what we are. We're a team, and we need coaching leadership styles because we need to understand the whole team. Everyone that brings something different, whether you're a point guard, you're a center, you're a power forward, whatever you are. I mean, I play basketball, so that's where I kind of go with. You have to understand people's unique talents and abilities and strengths and weaknesses, and you have to do the best you can in the challenging landscape.
Absolutely. I really resonate as well with what you said about, you actually believe that people who come to the table actually have similar motivations. And so often people who get to the table actually believe that the other people are it's like a zero-sum game. You take some and I lose. It's you take or I lose. And yet it's so unhelpful. And people aren't able to see that synergy, but you seeing synergy seems to be one of your unique abilities in visioning. Where do you think that comes from?
I think playing on teams, growing up, to be honest. My dad made it very important that we did an individual sport and then we did team sports. And the individual sports obviously teach you about yourself and your self-reliance and determination and, grit and resilience, these things. But mindset of a team is different, because no matter how strong you are individually, it means nothing unless you can utilize it in that system or in that team. And no matter how strong you are in your talent, if you can't be used how your strengths played out in that game and that formation, you're only good as your weakest link. And so for me, I always think, how do we help one another to recognize, amplify our strengths, but also work on our weakness, and to create this synergy? Because I feel like you're absolutely right when you said that people are at the table for a reason. People don't want to waste time or energy, especially these days. We're limited on time or energy. Both are, valuable resources. And so when someone makes a commitment to show up at the table, it's very important to focus on the reason you're there and what in that time-space reality makes it about the connection that can carry it forward. I also feel that I was lucky. I had a very close relationship with my brother growing up and my sister growing up. I think they definitely are dynamic now. Even we call ourselves the Fab Five. Like, my parents, my brother, my sister, and I, we're the Fab Five. And we always say, that we have to remember our foundation and our roots and strengthen that. And it takes work. It takes a lot of communication. And even in my own family life, it takes a lot of communication. There's often messages that are misconstrued. Texting and messaging does not help the situation necessarily, but it takes a sit down Sunday dinner, and really talking about things deeply and what it is that we are trying to create. So I feel that every arena in my life, I need to ensure that this exists. And I think my parents and my family laid the foundations for that we are stronger together. My mom has this saying on the wall. It's like, we may not have it all together, but together we have it all.
Wow.
And it's always, been a reminder of, that's the kind of household I grew up in. And if you're not doing something for someone else other than yourself, you're not doing anything. I'm sure you have the similar cultural upbringing.
I do. And what I'm thinking of when I hear that is that is the ethos of Canada. That is the ethos of Canada, that we are stronger together. Come, bring your culture to this country, and together we're going to make something synergistically better than anywhere else. And that really excites me, that it's so awesome that you had such amazing parents, your mom with those principles and your dad with that drive and that push. What a fantastic privilege you had to be in that Fab Five. You mentioned that that you have had experience at tables. I know that you've.
Right.
It's now called BC Family Doctors, but you were involved in the Society of General Practitioners before. Tell us about that experience. Like, what role did you play there, and what did that mean to you? Mm-hmm.
I started out as a vice delegate to District 16, which was Fraser, and I was brought into the fold of the executive as secretary, and went on to be the president of, which is now BC Family Doctors, originally was Society of General Practice. And there's an interesting story, I hope I'm allowed to share, about how I got there, because I was at a provincial event under a different umbrella, but as a family physician, I showed up there and there was a table of individuals, I'll leave which unnamed, and I listened. And I've learned that as the young woman of color, pretty hard not to be seen as a young woman of color. So I learned how to tiptoe in these rooms and be quiet and save my opinion for last. And at one of these events, I made which I thought could have been a career changing direction in a negative way, change to a positive. So I listened to a table, which I hope I'm allowed to share this, but I was the only woman at that table. I was the only person younger than the age of, I would say, 60. And I was one of the only people of color. So there was a conversation going on about the future of medicine, future of primary care, and recruitment, retention, among other things. So I listened, I sat there quietly. And then, I worked on my patience a bit. I have a great deal of patience with children and my own patients. Most of my friends and my colleagues, my parents, siblings, my neighbors. But sometimes adults, intelligent, very well-to-do adults, I had a slip. Let's just say I had a little bit of a slip, and I just really said what I wanted to say. It just came out of my mouth. And I had said that, did it occur to you that you're designing a system without anybody that's going to live to practice in it? And I kind of said, you may all be in your graves when this arrives.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
I didn't think. I'm a human. I made a mistake. And I'm a highly apologetic person, if you know me. And I was like, okay, but I was exasperated. I was a little done. I was, frustrated for sure about how are we going to work in this primary care? How am I going to work in my practice? I couldn't pay my lease to run my practice, like all these concerns. And here I am, this person that wants to change the world, and I want to do all these things, and I really want to advocate for my patients and my marginalized populations, and the work takes a lot longer than a 10-minute visit. I would be in patient rooms for 40 minutes at times because people would tell me their life stories and I wanted to fix them in a visit. So I was a little, I had a little bit of
Fire.
This leading up to it. In that moment, I left the table and I was in dismay and I was upset with myself. I'm very, as you know, we are very hard on ourselves and very critical of myself. I don't show emotion, but I showed up a little bit angry, but frustrated nonetheless. And I had someone come look for me, who was at that time one of the presidents of this association and one of the executive directors, who is, I hope I can mention her, but Dr. Jean Clark. She's one of my mentors, I would say, because I just have had such a profound respect for the way she leads her life, not only as a woman, but as a physician and a clinician, and she's been really instrumental into difficult conversations over the years, and highly respected colleague. So she came up to me, and she didn't know that I knew who she was, but I clearly knew who she was. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Here we go. They're going to tell me the college, or I've done something terrible and I'm so sorry. And she said, that was brilliant. I heard what you did. And I said, what? And she's like, I want you part of who we are. And I was like, part of who are you? And I thought it was some secret society at that time, because I'm like,
secret society.
Because it's in Doctors of BC. It's a section for family practice. It's for all the GPs. And I wasn't even sure if I was paying the dues or the fees, or, I was, in a world of jargon between all of the colleges and what they do and what Doctors of BC does for us versus, the section. And I was like, okay, you sure you want me there? Do you know what I said? I speak my opinion. Sometimes I have a hard time keeping it in. And she said, that's absolutely what we need. And it's a refreshing energy. And I thought, I thought it was career suicide, to be honest. I really did. I felt I'm not going to work anywhere around here because people are going to think, who is she? And she had some nerve. And some of them were like UBC professors and, like people that have a lot of clout in the world. And you know what, to be honest, that table, since I've had a conversation with every one of those individuals that was on that table, I learned afterwards on the giants on who these individuals were. Some of them, the doctors that have laid the foundation for family medicine or primary care in this province, 35, 40 years ago. So much respect to them and all of their work that they've laid. But I also just spoke to the glaring reality of the situation and inequities and disparities. And how could you dare create something without the people that are going to work in it and the recipients of it? So one, you need a patient or a family or children or, who's looking at the visioning for that. Then you need an innovative person, which is not me, but there's a lot of people with great ideas and great solutions. And then you need to know who's going to work in your system. So if you don't have representatives from each of those prongs, then it's hard to create something that you're not going to be alive to appreciate. So it got me into the society, and wow, what a change in my life. I don't give up my Sundays usually for anything. And they're known to have Sunday board meetings. And over the years, I commit my Sundays to, the society, and I'm a soulful, spiritual kind of Sunday person. So, and soccer, I used to play soccer and my kids played soccer. So I kind of commit to that, but I went that for them. And the kind of relationships and heartfelt conversations, leadership, respect, mentorship that I've gained within that boardroom, wow. I am so appreciative, so much gratitude. And there were some tough and difficult conversations to be a part of, privy of, but that's exactly what I needed, because I needed to learn how different people thought. Where were they coming from? What were the motivations? And the beautiful thing for me was here we have people from all aspects of the province. We've got people from Prince Rupert here in this room. We've got people from Fort St. John in this room. We've got people from the island and Kamloops and, near the borders of Nelson and, everywhere truly representative of a province and the type of care. We had community-based, facility-based, hospitalists. We've got palliative care. We've got sports medicine. We've got to have crucial conversations. And I thought, wow, I'm learning so much. And it was the insight of the negotiations process and strategy and humanity and everyday people understanding the economics and the struggles of balancing work-life balance. I don't know if I added to them as what they gave to me. I mean, I've had people reach out to me and say that things changed, and I don't think that's credit to me, but I think it's the credit to allowing people to be more vulnerable. I had a lot of coffee conversations. I had a lot of break conversations. I got to know every single person on that board, and I know personal aspects of every single person on that board in a way that maybe not everyone knows or maybe cared to know but didn't have the courage to ask. We've brought in rituals, different practices. They've got a different executive director now, Dr. Renee Fernandez, who's done an immense job at changing the way we see ourselves and allowing people to have more of a personal approach. So we started sharing photos of ourselves, of our childhood, values, philosophy, of what we were personally bringing to the table, having TED Talks by Simon Sinek and having things open our eyes in a way that maybe we weren't used to, breaking bread with people, saying grace, having moments of laughter, really being human in that room. And I think, I think you were at that conference we had, was the first ever partnership at that time with the BC College of Family Physicians, which, wow, what a day, what a conference, what an amazing thing to be part of inaugurally. And have input and learn from so many valuable physicians around the province. I mean, even our specialty colleagues that came and helped and represented us, and the amazing work that primary care physicians and family doctors across the province are doing, because we do carry a lot of the work, but none of this work is possible without our specialist colleagues. We're all interconnected, we're all interdependent. And yeah, this definitely changed my life and definitely changed my leadership journey for sure.
Mm-hmm. You know what? It sounds like I called you crazy earlier, but actually you're audacious and you spoke the truth, and you proved your hypothesis correct, that some of those people at that table did have the same motivations, right? To advance healthcare for all of British Columbians, and that they weren't nefarious.
No,
but they might not have had the appropriate inclusion and the cognitive diversity that needs to be there.
Absolutely.
You just mentioned that the importance of working together with specialist colleagues, and you said that you have to have patience there. I heard you say that, and just as you said, hey, you guys, you older folks are designing a system for people who won't actually, for people, you're not actually going to be there, and so you might not have everything that you need to know how to do the specifics of this system. I think sometimes patients feel that way about how healthcare is designed as well. That sometimes our designs are more provider-centric than patient-centric.
Right.
Do you see our system evolving to include patient voices at every design table?
Absolutely. I think you've also been part of Quality Forum, what Dr. Cochrane had started. And I believe the Patient Voices Network, they have a place in the role to play. I think it's very important. I think being at the collaborative table with the Child Youth Mental Health Substance Use Provincial Collaborative actually helped me shape our own viewpoints. And it was beautiful because we had the force, the family, that the society at that time that represented the families with lived experience, and having patient and child at every meeting. And for myself as well, I ran the meetings. I was a physician lead in White South Surrey for that, and making sure that their voice was heard and that they could understand what process we were dealing with. And I think what they understood, they came in a very naive way, but they also had learning, and they also understood that, wow, your job's not as easy as it is for us, or that we think. And we assume these things for doctors, like, why didn't you know I had a CT in North Van? Well, my system doesn't connect to that system, so I can't see what you've had done. And I don't blame patients. Sometimes I thought, it doesn't make sense if I just drive 20 kilometers this way. Why can't it's a different health authority, they can't communicate. I mean, I know we fixed that and we've worked towards changing that, but it is in a world of evolutionary tech, in such a fast-paced world, that we would think that we would have revolutionized the way we can communicate and which way we can share information, which I know there's a healthcare data collaboration. I know there's a lot of work being done around the province with this. But some of this stuff should be intuitive, or you'd think would be kind of common sense in a way. And so patient-centric care, I think all physicians that provide care are thinking about their patient. However, I feel like the system, when it was initially built, was trying to be provider-centric, but at this time as well, I don't know if that definitely is. I think we're kind of stuck. As someone, I work in facilities, I know you do as well. I feel that we are trying our best under the certain circumstances. And I think we finally realized that we're not doing it the best way. So we're reaching outwards. We're looking for answers and solutions outside ourselves, which I think is very important. But I feel like there needs to be a little bit more cohesiveness. I think as a province, as the responsibility to our public, to our patients, to our own selves, right? We're recipients of the same healthcare system. I mean, I think we all want change in a way that's going to be efficient and help ourselves and allow our innovation and quality health improvement projects to actually be the way that we lead and the way that we get to receive care and provide care. So I think it's definitely changing. And I think at least our hospitals are being more informed with the patient process and the way that they can input into trying to change care. Because at the end of the day, even our politicians, they're serving our public, they're serving our patients. So if we remember that if we serve our public and patients with that's how we lead, then it's a moot point because we are all in one direction. So I think it's just aligning ourselves for our patients also and the public to see ourselves that we're trying our best. You know, slates get changed, surgeries change, timings change, something happens, physicians get sick or coverage is not there, things get missed. All of these things are part of our daily struggles and we're all trying to do better. But I think when we assume, like you said earlier, then the assumptions really don't help articulate what it is that we're trying to create. And unless we're very clear and show up with a very honed agenda and say that this is what we're here for, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get there, but we'll do it collaboratively, then we're in that position until we get there.
Yeah, I think I've heard some of our own colleagues as family physicians assume that specialist colleagues have it amazing, that they're making bank, they're buying yachts, and that they actually don't care that we are drowning as family physicians in work. Right. And I haven't seen that to be true. I think our specialist colleagues do have empathy for many of the struggles that we're going through. Right. Some of them may not. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can't speak for all of them. I can speak for the ones that have had very open conversations with me and that I've had the pleasure of sitting amongst and had dialogue with. You're right. Everyone struggles. There's so many people that have their own struggles, whether they're personally or professionally. The economic burden has been, to everyone that has a clinic or overhead or staff, has been immense this whole year. Facilities are also losing time or surgeries or operating times, and the proceduralists are definitely hurting as well. It hasn't spared anybody. And so I think, well, I hear what you're saying because I hear those conversations. I don't think that's the norm. I think we need to realize, and instead of assuming, we really need to hear from everybody. I think it's very valuable to allow people to speak their truth. And we do not need to put words in people's mouths. We don't need to assume because, again, it's like a game of telephone. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe in hearsay. I don't believe in assumptions. I really believe in let's have a true, authentic conversation and let's see what it really is. And let's look at the data. Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at what really is happening rather than assuming. And I think that knowledge translation is sometimes we operate in a vacuum. So sometimes I feel that on the ground, myself included, when I was disillusioned because when you're removed from it, because you're so busy in your day-to-day, you don't necessarily understand the process. And that's another thing that hope that I have is that moving forward, we have a different way of communicating with our physicians on the ground who at the grassroots are trying to do this work, but don't understand the process, whether it's negotiations or strategy or advocacy or whatever work is being done. I think the knowledge translation needs to be bigger.
Absolutely. That those pathways of communication of how things are done really has to be tended to, but it's so challenging because I think the leaders that have come before us have tried to do that and it just didn't penetrate from whatever place they were at, the table they were at, to the physician running on the treadmill of doing their own work.
Right.
And that communication channel is so challenging to bridge. I'm at a loss of how to do it, but if anybody can do it, you can.
Well, I don't know. Don't put that much hope and pressure on me. But I think as an individual, I don't have the answers, but collectively, absolutely. And I think Now is the time that I feel that the pump has been primed. Say it what you may.
Hmm.
I feel that because we've had the divisions of family practice, we've got communities of change within family doctors, we've got the specialists, the SSC, the engagement, healthcare, the authority, facility engagement work. I feel that now we've moved and shifted into a direction where at least we've got more colleagues. We don't have everyone's involvement, which would be my goal, which would be, we represent, there's so many physicians in this province. My goal would be to amazingly have as many of us we could be engaged at some sort of platform or ability to connect, especially this day and age. We've moved so fast in tech that I feel that there should be a way that we could actually input ideas, engage with one another, find solutions, because there's so many innovators among us and there's so many deep thinkers within our own profession. But there's also been so many great partnership tables and collaborative work that's been done. So I think we've definitely, the leaders before us have set the tone in which this kind of change needed to happen. And, like you, I also feel like, oh, if we get a solution, let's do it overnight. Let's just change it like now. Change is now. I think the change that we need now is we need every vote. We need everybody that is part of this physician cohort or this profession to speak up. Because when you're mute and you're silent, people assume, right? They assume they know what you're thinking about, or they assume you don't care, or they assume you're too cool to care. And it's not that, because I've had these conversations with people. Why are you not engaged? Well, because I don't see myself there. I don't even know what's happening there. So it's time to change that. And I think without having people feel they're part of something or that something is definitely changing, then they don't want to be a part of it. I don't blame them. They're busy. It's a busy world, and you have to pick your battles and you have to pick your commitments, and that can be very challenging. But I really think this is the time that we encourage everyone that hasn't been involved before to get their voice heard at the table. And I think without doing it, and even myself, people will say, oh, you're so young, you've got the rest of your life to do this work. And I said, you don't know my life pattern. I've had my close calls here. So I don't know what tomorrow has in store for me. So I think I have to start with today. And I have to know that it's one thing to whine and gripe about it in my office and be so angry at the system and the way it's not working. But until I actually went to call out my own assumptions, I had no idea really how hard the work is, that this leadership, this journey of these physicians with this responsibility for all of us is really intimidating.
Hmm. You'd mentioned that a lot of your formative years happened in Surrey, British Columbia. I happen to be a proud Surrey boy myself. Tell me about Surrey. Tell me about your experiences here.
So I grew up, I didn't grow up in Surrey, but when I moved back from the US, I moved to work. I didn't move to Surrey, but I wanted to work in Surrey because I like challenges and I like to go where things aren't always prim and proper and pretty, because I think there's beauty in trauma. I think there's beauty in marginalized populations. And I feel like if you can make things work in an arduous environment, then you basically can reinvent yourself anywhere. So I took it as a challenge, which was quite challenging. I'm not going to lie, because a lot of my own culture, my own people have been conditioned to receive care in a certain way. And again, my own assumptions were that people are just doing this hodgepodge care and there's no comprehensive care that's being done. And, other people's commentary was trying to influence how I practiced. And you don't need to go there. You don't want to go there. Just avoid there. And it made me want to go even more. Like my counter will is definitely kicking in and saying, no, you don't want to change this. I'm going to do things differently. And there's a beauty in the innocence and the naivety and the depth of lack of resources. As you know, that health authority serves some of the most people. Actually, during COVID, we have had the most cases. And I don't think their funding and allocation or resources, I think, doesn't reflect that. That's my opinion. Again, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know this to be true in other avenues, such as the child youth mental health advocacy. So I felt that this place, if we can understand the diversity, the challenges, and the circular kind of way of care, I feel that we can build something substantial. Hats off to people that work, at Surrey Memorial. It is one of the busiest ERs in North America from when you look at the numbers, the volume of patients, but there's also a cultural expectancy, and it's an interesting divide because some patients will come and see you every day, twice a day. They'll try to come see you and they think doctors get paid no matter what's happening. I can go see one doctor and get a second opinion the same day and it's okay, And when I worked evenings, I found out the hard way because, people have gone seen one ex-doctor in the morning, came to me at night and saw me in the clinic, and then I got rejected payments. I never got paid for seeing those patients. But yet your bills are still having to be paid. Your overhead still goes out. You've got staff to employ. So those are the interesting misnomers about the patient population. And the other thing is that I had quite a few medical emergencies in my clinic because there's a lot of stoicism. Like, I don't know, do I really need to see a doctor? Yeah, you're having a stroke or you're having a heart attack or yeah. So it's a really interesting way to look at cultural expectations or patient expectations and communication and knowledge sharing, because that I feel is a place there needs to still be a lot of work. And I know there's a lot of physicians working really hard to change that. But it's a process. It takes time. And I think that people don't understand the nuances of trying to work within a system with people that don't understand how the system works. So I think the education is really important, both for patients and providers, and making yourself available, because I also have empathy for these providers because you're seeing volumes larger than anybody else. And I'm sure no one wants to really close their door to patients and say that I'm not able or I'm at capacity to be unable to see you or unable to take care of your health. And I think the big thing we struggle with is trying to make sure that people have family doctors. There's a limited resources and limited supply. And we tried to fix that with some of the attachment work. But at the same time, when you've got so many people in need, it makes really difficult. If money is going into acute care settings at times, as opposed to bridging community care, it makes things difficult. I understand the needs and the drivers for that allocation of resources, but people need to understand, like Barbara Charfield's work, or you look at the primary care systems and you look at models in the South or in the US or in other countries such as Denmark, and you look at what they've done and you try to change the system here, it really works in the community setting. We have to get it right the first time with developing networks and a sense of community, because otherwise the way that people show up in our emergency room and the cultural expectation and the way that patients show up hasn't changed at all. And actually it's just going to drive more numbers because, there's another acute setting I can just go to. It's not a big deal. And the other thing is that a lot of patients feel like, I didn't want to come to you. I just went to someone else. I just went to a walk-in because it's a less of a problem. Or I just went to the emergency, it was open, I didn't want to bother you. So it's really, again, Surrey has been a very interesting learning because I think it's such a diverse approach, and the solution is going to be multifactorial.
Absolutely. We're looking currently at the data around access and flow within the hospital, and we've realized that we've almost maximized what we can do in the hospital, and everything has to do with the community, about shaping demand for the services at the hospital. And it's about propping up family physicians and networked primary care and access to primary care so that the hospital, which is a high cost center, doesn't have to actually incur more costs in our publicly funded system. Exactly.
Right.
I wanted to reflect that today I've heard that you've been a patient. You have a patient perspective. You were literally shitting the bed at one point as a patient.
Oh my goodness.
and then you might try to have to edit this out, but that's how deep you were as a young adult physician. You were in that position,
Right.
and then you went and you actually connected in your recovery with from physical ailments to a leadership position where you were exposed to the perspective of rural physicians. You mentioned Prince Rupert, Fort St. John, Nelson, British Columbia. You were able to get and encompass those perspectives.
Right.
And then you've been a family physician and you have so many connections. You've intentionally made connections which has made you very resilient as a byproduct, but you've actually encompassed and brought in an inclusive amalgamation of multiple perspectives in your brain. I think that makes you pretty ideal for someone who might lead change within our province going forward. You mentioned that your name comes from Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages known to humankind. And you bring with that tradition, family values, and connectivity, and all these things. It's pretty special, Ramneek. It's pretty special.
You're so kind. Way too kind.
What do you think you might try to do with this opportunity of yours? I think we're looking for a leader.
Well, I honestly didn't think that I was this leader. I wasn't the firstborn child in my family. I thought my brother was always that role. But I honestly think if I bring anything to the table, I will bring everyone with me. I am not there for my own voice. This is not about me, in that I've got a very difficult way of kind of exposing myself or coming out as an extroverted position, which can be challenging at times. But I'm willing to do it on the backs of all my colleagues and for my colleagues that are feeling tired or feeling spent or unheard or disengaged. And that's what I want to do. I want to invigorate us to the leaders that we truly are. Every single one of us is a leader, whether we want to accept it or not, because we are a leader every day to our patients, to our province, to our society, in our own individual lives. We've embarked on one of the most difficult tasks. We went to medical school. I truly believe that there is a different fiber in some of our beings, not in an egotistical manner or a conceited tone at all, but something that is within all of us that begs for the altruism or the advocate or maybe activist or the call for human rights and protection. And within this global pandemic, I've watched us rise like never before. The world watched us rise like never before. I always saw it. We always saw it in each other. But now to continue that momentum, the synergy and the inertia of how we came together is so important. I think if there was ever a time in which we could come together with compassionate leadership, see each other as we are and who we are as humans, I really, people call me the delusional optimist. I'll just say the optimist, because I really believe that we could do something exceptional, remarkable. I honestly think, because of the work of all of you giant colleagues I have, that have done incredible work. I don't know if you've ever seen the Don Ricks Award recipients. I mean, we've got physicians that have created heart therapy, IVF, and we've got people that have changed and revolutionized laboratory medicine, or, there's so many levels of accolades and recognitions and awards, but this is not even about that. This is about recognizing every single physician, human in this province and giving them a chance to articulate themselves. Show up, vote for your voice, and tell at least the organization that you're here, you're ready to be engaged, and you're ready for change. And change doesn't have to be radical. And people have sometimes, said, like, what kind of change? We're going to challenge. I love the way I work. Well, that's great. If it works for you, then share your insights. What's making it work for you? And how do we leverage that opportunity for others? I think this is really about creating the world we want to live in and being a part of the system. I know all the work that you do with Dr. Schmecker and you guys with IHI and quality improvement, and the wisdom within our profession in this province is remarkable. I mean, there's so many people that I would love to have deep dives with and be a part of a collaborative think tank, or a place where we actually change. But I think the most important thing becomes with the change within each of us and being able to be vulnerable. I think that speaks, whether people like to see that or not, it allows people permission within our own profession to ask for help, to have the courage. Something we didn't talk about today was physician suicide, but the rate's pretty alarming, having known people that have, colleagues that have gone through that. I think it's really something we need to talk about, is that how do we show each other grace and kindness and humility and show up the way we want it for our patients and for the public for the first time to recognize that we're human. We're trying our best. The 7 o'clock, ring the alarm, shake the bell, the clap. Like, how amazing was that? Was that not invigorating and enthusiastic to, not that we need validation externally, but a driver for change, and say, you know what, we're here. We see you. We know the hard work that you're doing and our healthcare teams. It's not just us alone on this journey. But if we can ask each other to be the best version of ourselves and to show up for our profession like we never have, then I really think we're on the brink of something revolutionary. I really do. I really think that we could lead in a way that makes politics mute. And I know that saying that is audacious, but I really think when I see what's happening in the world unfolding around us, I think it's commanding leadership and within all of us and professionals, not just medicine, but all walks of life. And I also think in our grassroots people, engaging our communities, having these conversations that are so much bigger than we know, because we know that we think health lives in the hospital. We think health lives just in our clinics, but health is so much more than that. It's affordable housing, it's access to healthcare and resources, and addressing the inequities that are systemically embedded, whether it's our system, whether it's a society. I think humans, we need to show up like the humans we are for the humans that we protect. So I think it's time.
You mentioned at the beginning of this that you're just a spirit having an interesting experience. And my spirit is so honored to know that your spirit exists and to be connected in this way. I thank you so much for your time, Ramneek. You've made an indelible impression on me, and I'm so excited for whatever happens with whatever you do.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honestly,
for your time.
I do want to, I didn't in the beginning, but I do want to acknowledge the land that we are on, the ancestral ceded territory that we do have these conversations on. And right now I'm on the Coast Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam Nation territory, having this conversation with you, which I think is very important to recognize. So thank you.
Thank you. I need to learn more about that, about the lands that I'm on. And yeah, thank you for leading with that. It was so exciting when I saw that there were different commitments made to cultural safety and humility. And in my mind, I was like, what other country is having these amazing commitments? And to know that you honor that, and it's a fantastic thing that go Rummy. You know?
You're too kind, way too sweet, but thank you.
Anything else you wanted to add before we close this off?
I just want people to think of the power of us. And I say that, I mean, I say that because I know we're better together. I know it's not my slogan, but it is the power within each of us that shows up for one another and for ourselves in a way that we haven't before. I challenge people, show me different, show me that we can do this. For all the people that didn't have the faith or lost hope in us as a profession and what we can actually do and the change agents that we are. We participate in lives. One of my blessings every day on the way to work is that thank you for allowing me the honor and privilege to participate in my patients' lives and my colleagues' lives the way I get to. That's my gratitude prayer on the way in. And the way out, same thing. I think of no matter how hard the day was, no matter how traumatic the experiences may have been, that was a call of action to the day, and to be really grateful and reminded of we participate in a way that is absolutely very intimate. And it is an honor and privilege, because I really do know we all worked so hard to be where we are. And I think acknowledging the tough roads, and some of our specialist colleagues who they worked even more years of experience and training and working under immense pressures, but reminding ourselves that we're all one of the same, that we are participating in these patients' lives, and it's time for us to participate in the lives of one another and each other, and see our collective wisdom, use it to propel us in a way that we show up and resonates with our public and with what we could create. I really am excited at the thought of what we could create together, because I've met some remarkable human beings who are colleagues and physicians and done ridiculous endeavors, challenging ways that we think, innovating new ideas, implementing strategies borrowed from other people's land and bringing them here. And I think the responsibility is now ours. It lies within us for our people, for our patients, but most importantly, ourselves. So let's be the change we want to see in the world.
Thank you, Rummy. I'm going to let us off with that. We need someone with that optimism and that inclusivity, and someone who sees themselves in the other. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.